I'm Eric Fredrickson. I know most of you in here. I want to welcome you to our November installment of the Online Learning Symposium. And it's my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Dr. Helene Marshall, to the university. Helene is the Director of Language Education Programs at Long Island University, and she's also an Associate Professor of Education there. She teaches courses in TESOL, linguistics, multicultural education, and she spans the gamut of teaching face-to-face, blended, as well as completely online. So covers all the bases for us. And she's also a member of the board for the Flipped Learning Network, and I think it's to some degree in that spirit that we really are excited about having her spend some time with us this afternoon, and to share her experiences, some of her thoughts and guidance in that context with regard to Flipped. So I'm going to just quickly turn it over to Helene and ask all of you to join me in welcoming her. Okay?
Okay, so we'll start with the obvious question. How many of you have heard of flipped learning before? And everyone hold your hand up, because everyone will. All right, keep your hand up if you've tried it. Keep your hand up if you've tried it. Okay, look around the room and look at the hands that are, some are kind of halfway up. I don't know what that means, but okay. But okay, look, so you have, these are your colleagues. These are your fellow folks here. So they will be your resource. And you already have people who are doing flipping here. And the best way to get started with flipped learning is to talk to someone who's already doing it. All right? And I'm glad to see that you already have some people here who are involved. I first got involved at my university. LIU has an annual technology retreat. And one year I always go to the retreat, and one year when they have this, on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge or whatever you call that, of the new technologies, and someone mentioned this, and it intrigued me, mainly because I had a problematic course. And some people say, what should I start with when I flip? Well, I started with a course I was having trouble with. So I was trying to figure out, what might help me with that course. It was linguistics. And the students were not doing well. They weren't getting good grades. They complained about the course. It was not happening. And I thought, well, maybe if I try flipped learning. And the results were astounding on many levels. And I'll be showing you that today. But that's how I first got involved, and then I started flipping one course after another to another. So I'm going to be taking you through a little bit of a journey here. Some of this I'm going to go through rather quickly, but you will have access to this entire PowerPoint, I'm sure, however we arrange that. So if there's a slide that you wanted another second to look at, you'll have plenty of time at your leisure to look at these slides. And we've got it on both sides, right? So everyone has a good view of the screen. Okay. All right, so this is our definition, and you have it on the handout. There's no real one way to define flipped learning, but we tried to have a kind of a generic definition that would cover what we felt was most important about it. And if you notice, we're calling it a pedagogical approach in which direct instruction moves from the group learning space to the individual learning space, and the resulting group space is transformed into a dynamic, interactive learning environment where the educator guides students as they apply concepts and engage creatively in the subject matter. So we have individual space, group space, we have creative and creating an environment and engaging in the subject matter. This is really an important part of it, is what happens after the flip, not just making the flip. And you'll notice that we use the term flipped learning. You may have heard the term flipped classroom. And I'm in linguistics, so semantics is important to me. And when people say, oh, it's just semantics, yeah, it's semantics. So here we have flipped classroom and flipped learning. So here's flipped classroom. Whoop, I switched it. I'm all set. I got a flipped classroom. But here's flipped learning. All right. So what we have to remember is that what we're trying to really do is transform instruction. That's what's going on here. And the flipping, you know, the buzz and the flipping is really kind of a way in to transform instruction. And I'm a teacher educator, and so that's where I'm coming from here. All right. So the question, of course, is, well, let's start with the origins. So this may be review for most of you, and I just want to go through the basics of it. How did it get started? It actually got started in higher education. Eric Mazur of Harvard was the first to flip, and he would stand there with his lectures, giving lectures, and he would think, why don't I just give the students my lecture notes and have them go home and read the lecture notes and then come and tell me what they didn't understand? And then finally, technology caught up to him, and he decided to do that technologically, and that's how this inverting the classroom started. But he uses the term peer instruction because what his approach involves is having the students work with each other in the lecture format. And I'll show you a little bit about that later. But that's his term. And again, it's terminology. People call it, if you are doing research on this and you Google it, you're going to have to use a variety of terms to get at what you want to get at, because people are using different terms. So peer instruction is flipped learning. And the real seminal article, the landmark article that everyone cites and refers to, and you should all kind of use that as your starting point, is the Lage, Platt, and Treglia article from 2000, and that's where the term was first used, inverting the classroom. And they were the ones who did this, and it means a lot to me that one of the reasons they did it was they wanted to reach all learners, and they felt that they were losing some of their students. And they did this as a way to perhaps provide better access to their materials to students who were not capturing them in the traditional lecture format. And that's a little bit of a thread or a theme that's going to go through this whole presentation as a reason to flip. And I always think the question isn't what is flipped learning. I mean, anyone can tell you that. You can look it up and you can find out. But the question we really want to know is, why should we use it? You know, what would be our rationale for it? And that's what I keep coming back to. Why should I do this? And then it really took off when the K-12 world discovered it. And it was primarily high school science and math teachers who glommed onto it and just ran off. And most people who've heard of flipped learning, John and Aaron started to use the term flipped learning as opposed to flipped classroom. And many, many more people have heard of John Bergman and Aaron Sams than anyone else when they think of flipped learning. And I think we need to grab it back. I mean, I think higher ed needs to get on this page much more than we have. It is huge in K-12 now, huge. And I really think that there's a lot of potential in higher ed, and I'm in higher ed, and I use it in all of my classes. So here's our next question. Okay, so we've had a lot of flavors of the month, right? Something new comes along. What am I going to do? That's why I called this presentation Beyond the Buzz, right? So is it the flavor of the month? Now, you know, to some extent, anything new that comes along, is there anything new under the sun? There's nothing new under the sun. So a lot of what we're doing, you're already doing, and it isn't necessarily totally new. But there's something new to it, and I think it's like anything else. You want to see what elements of it are new and sustainable, all right? And we're going to take a look at that in a minute. What I want to show you first is the Horizon Report, which came out, this is last year's Horizon Report. They look at technological trends, and they did select flipped learning as one of the 6 topics that they featured as having near-term category adoption, time to adoption 1 year or less. This is from last year. And what interests me is that if you look at the digital strategy, they're saying that they call something a digital strategy when it is used to enrich teaching and learning. And that's important, that the goal here is not the technology, it's the enriching of teaching and learning that's made possible whether inside or outside the classroom. And then the other point is to call it an innovation when it really transcends conventional ideas or learning activities. And so they are saying that yes, it is a digital strategy, it is an innovation. So that's from the Horizon report. And I have my own way of describing flipped learning in a nutshell for me. So this is my read on what I think flipped learning is and why it's important. I see flipped learning as robust instruction made possible by leveraging technology to create fertile spaces for teaching and learning. So that's my definition of it. And I think the reason I phrase it this way is that the technology is being leveraged. And we use it because it's 2015 and people are surrounded by technology and they're going to use it anyway, and so what can we do to enhance learning? And I use the phrase create fertile spaces for everything that I do because I think of our role as to create an environment for all of our students where they can learn and grow, and that space doesn't have to be like a space like this right now. It can be at home or anywhere. Learning can take place in any kind of a space. And it also means psychological and emotional space, which can be used metaphorically. So this is my personal definition for flipped learning. All right, so to get to the nuts and bolts, one of the things we say about it is that, and here I'm using the term classroom intentionally as the starting point for the way it was conceived, which is that direct instruction takes place outside of class and practice and application in class. If you've never heard that, that's the definition of the original, this is the original flipped classroom, all right? And then if you relate it to Bloom's taxonomy, the idea is, this is all reviewing, the idea is that the lower levels of Bloom take place outside of class. Why are we spending class just explicating material? And then in class, we can concentrate on the upper levels of Bloom. And what this leads to is increased comprehension, increased interaction in the classroom, and increased critical thinking skills. So because of the flip, we now have comprehensible input from multiple sources, so the students can get comprehensible input outside class. I have students who watch my material 5 times, back, rewind, listen again, until they get it, until they individually get it. And they're not embarrassed about that because it may take them a lot longer than another student, but it becomes comprehensible input for them. And then they have multiple sources because when they come to class, they have me, they have the other students, and so they're getting it from multiple ways, multiple areas. And then interaction increases because you have much more time. We're not interacting right now, I'm gabbing at you. But the thing is, in a flipped learning setting, we would be doing all kinds of interactive work, and the value of meaningful interaction is that it's happening with both peers and the instructor. So the instructor is getting around to most of the students in most of the sessions. And then also critical thinking skills. It can become more cognitively demanding and intellectually challenging. This was one of the most amazing ones to me. What I can do in my linguistics class is completely different from what I used to be able to do. I had all I could do just to teach them the nuts and bolts of linguistics, whereas now I don't have to worry as much about that, and I am able to put on exams problems that I had to do in class with them, holding their hand, because we spend so much time doing actual linguistics problems in class that they get really good at that, and I can do much more advanced work in class and put more difficult items on the exams. It's really changed my fundamentals of linguistics completely. And to show Bloom, this is just the more recent version that John and Erin are showing people, which is they made a diamond out of it. I don't know if this appeals to you or not. It's usually presented, maybe if you've seen the Bloom's taxonomy. So they're showing it this way now, so I'm showing it to you. For what it's worth, what they're saying is that most of our time is really spent with students analyzing and applying. That's where the lion's share takes place in most courses. And so they demonstrate it this way. But it's basically the same idea that I mentioned before, that the lower levels are the out-of-class portion, and as you move through the upper levels, they are more the in-class portion, okay? So that's the Bloom view. And then I wanted also to relate it, there are a lot of movements now, different terms are used, active learning, deeper learning. I don't know how many of you have gotten involved in those sorts of things. There's a deeper learning MOOC, if anyone's into MOOCs, very interesting conversations going on, trying to talk about how collaborative learning is a direction we want to go into, and much more interaction among learners. And this movement is one that is trying to reach learners on the level of what meets their needs and means something to them, not only delivering curriculum, delivering instruction. And I think that it makes a perfect blend with flipped learning because we can leverage technology. If you've heard of mastery learning, that's another area where if you have smaller classes, you can differentiate your instruction. And in mastery learning, they may be working on different areas at different times, watching different videos. So for example, my stronger students might be directed to a site or a video on something more challenging, and others may, I teach a grammar course, for example, and some of them are still like parts of speech. So I send them off to work on the basics of parts of speech because they need that, and you can really differentiate a lot that way, and that's the mastery learning. And then of course we've talked about maximizing classroom interaction, and this leading from behind business really has come home to me as a major shift in the role of the instructor, and the students take more center stage, and my role has become more of a leading from behind, kind of observing, giving feedback, working on areas of difficulty rather than just a broad brush of teaching everything. So that it's more, what are the points, what are the speed bumps? And over time, you kind of know the speed bumps in your course anyway. But that's another advantage. So I kind of call it the perfect blend, okay? So, getting back to the flavor of the month. I teach methods courses, I'm in teacher ed, and I tell my students, because there's always a new method. I'm in TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages, and there's always a new TESOL method. Everyone's always thinking of something new. We had Suggestopedia or Silent Way or all these different buzzwords. And I tell my students, whatever the method is now, I'm not going to be there 10 years from now when some new thing that comes down the pike. So I'm going to give you 3 questions you want to ask about any new method. 3 questions. And always ask yourself these 3 questions before you decide whether you want to adopt something. So this is getting back to the flavor of the month. So the first question is, what's in it for instructors? Why would it appeal to instructors? And the second is, why would it appeal to students? What is it that students might like about it? And then the third is, what does it say that jives with what we know about theory and research in our field? So those are the 3 questions, all right? So I've applied those 3 questions to flipped learning. So why do instructors like it? Well, yes, it does save time. One of the pressures we have is getting through the syllabus. And then of course, if there's, weather related, there are all kinds of reasons why you have trouble getting through your syllabus on any given semester. So it does save time because you have farmed out a lot of that direct instruction, and you're able to focus class time on other aspects of your course. So that's one very practical reason why instructors like it. Also, as I mentioned before, it does shift your role to being more of a facilitator and less, I am the provider of your information. Because today, and I don't want to overdo this, but I do want to mention the fact that we are teaching a generation, another generation, and in this generation, the students go and get their content. They don't need to be sitting in a room with someone at a podium giving them their content. When my son and daughter want to learn something, they go off and they find it somewhere. They don't necessarily sign up for a course and come to lectures and learn it that way. So the facilitator role is observation, which is very important. You get to observe the learners. I mean, if you're up front teaching them, you're not observing them. But if in a flipped classroom, you can spend a lot of time observing your students. You can give them feedback because you're observing what's going on. You can give them individual feedback, group feedback. There's a lot of movement. I mean, it's nice. We have tables here. My class has no front. There's no front in my class. If you walk in my classroom, you don't know where the front is because there are different activities going on in different parts of the room. There might be a smart board here and a whiteboard there and a flip chart back there, and there are different things going on in the room. So the third is assessment. Informal assessment goes on all the time. So I've always got the pulse of my students. Whereas if you're just up front, you don't have that. And then the results, the mastery. Almost all, and I have piles of studies. I was reading through them and I was saying, "Shall I give you the data?" I mean, study after study is showing that the results in terms of material, the mastery of material, you really do get more mastery, better results of the content that you're trying to teach when you do this successfully. So that's why instructors like it. Why do students like it? They take ownership of their learning. They're in charge. They're in the driver's seat. They're not passive. They're not sitting there saying, "Okay, teach me. What grade did I get? What do I have to do? Tell me the assignment." It's an interesting shift. And for some of them, it's uncomfortable. And in some of the studies, what I found was in the early part of the semester, there's some resistance and a little bit of like, "What? You mean I can't just come to class and, and then, it's." So there's a resistance, but then when they realize, hey, wait a minute, this is my course. Oh, I get to decide, I get to learn, I get to, because it's in them. When you think about first graders, I don't know how many of you ever interact with first graders anymore, but do you remember this? Ooh, remember that? Ooh, what happened to that? Where did that go? Okay, where did that go? We squashed that years ago. All right. But I saw that in my graduate linguistics course. They were fascinated, they were grabbing at it. It's interesting because we want to learn. You guys are lifelong learners. You know how exciting it is. You can get students fired up. You can. I've seen it happen. They're active. They walk in the room. You walked in the room today. Okay, you got your lunch. He said if I walk, he'll follow me. You walked in, you got your lunch, you sat down, right? But what if instead, and I only had an hour, so I couldn't do it, but normally when I do workshops on flipped learning, you don't walk in and sit down. You're going to do something right at the get-go. You're going to be active. You're going to be involved. And that's the way classrooms that are flipped work. We don't start with they don't wait for me. They walk in, they're working, they're doing something. They're already involved, okay? And there's ongoing support. That's really, really important. They work with each other, they help each other, they get into small groups, and it's a busy place, it's a busy room. So that's why students like it. The research, okay, affectively. The findings tend to be attendance is up. If I missed the lecture, I'll read the text, whatever, what's on the exam, motivation goes up and participation goes up. This is what most of the studies are finding. The cognitive piece, self-directed learning, we know that people do better when they can self-direct. And they are thinking more clearly because they're thinking of themselves instead of it being my responsibility to say, do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? They're saying to themselves, do I get it? Or do I need to revisit this concept? Do I need to watch that video, or do I need to ask the person next to me? So they kind of take more responsibility, and therefore they're thinking more carefully about what they're learning. And they're self-assessing. They're aware of their learning process. They know whether they're getting it or not. And they're not just leaving that up to us on an exam to tell them, okay? So now, is it for everybody? So I've had instructors say, not for me, you do it. In fact, on my own campus, on my own campus, they say, oh, she's a techie one, she does all that stuff. You know, let me tell you something. I'm not the techie one. I wasn't the techie one. You know, I once went for a job interview. They said, do you teach online? It was the first question. First question. I said, no, but I can learn. And I said to myself, you know, like in Scarlett O'Hara, just never again. You remember that scene in Gone with the Wind? She takes the carrot, never again. And I thought to myself, that's it. I'm going to be a techie. And I just made it my professional development. And I decided, you know, this is important. I want to learn. I want to learn. And I've just been learning and learning and learning, and to not be afraid. And so I don't know who's in this room. I don't know anything about you. But if there's someone in this room who's saying to themselves, I'm not a techie, I don't do that. Don't worry, it's okay. First of all, there are instructional designers to help you. There are IT people to help you. There are your fellow people who are flipping to help you. So you don't need to make it about that, okay? So it doesn't need to be about that, all right? Also, other people have said, well, I use the Socratic method. And I have my lectures, and this is the way I teach, and I know exactly how I want to interact with my students. Well, it's interesting because I feel like I can do more of that kind of questioning and back and forth by walking around the room and working with them. Or also, if you do have large classes, there are ways you can use, and right now I don't have large lecture classes, but you can use clickers and you can ask them questions, and you can get feedback and find out what the pulse of the room is, okay? So, and in your lectures and in my lectures that I record, and I'll show you in a minute, it's already, a little bit about what I do, but I don't lecture. Mine are interactive, where I ask them questions, I pause, I give them hints, I have them think, they have to respond, and then we work through the next slide. I mean, they're lessons. I teach, okay? Also, some instructors say, well, I'm not really a teacher. I have a field. I have a discipline. I'm trained in my field. I'm not trained to be a teacher, really. And you're turning me into someone who's more, you know, I'm supposed to be actually interacting more with my students than I might feel comfortable doing, you know. But actually, all of us got into this field because we are teachers. And even though you have a field, I mean, I'm a linguist. I'm a linguist. I love linguistics, you know. but you know, teaching is something that we all really do. And once you flip and you interact with your students, you will feel over time very comfortable, I think, in doing that kind of facilitation if you're not used to it. And as I said, I don't know, you know, exactly who you all are and what your experience has been, but I would say it's for most instructors, maybe not all. How about students? Is it for all students? Well, you know what? No. I'd hate it, tell you the truth. I'm really not, I'm very solitary. I get up at 6 in the morning and I'm on my computer till noon and I forget to have coffee. I mean, I'm very tunnel vision. I just want to be by myself. You know, I'm very, it's not for everybody. It's not for all students. A lot of students love sitting at lectures. They want to learn that way. They don't want to hear about other students. They don't want to learn from other students. They want to learn from the professor. They want to hear the professor. They signed up for this famous, well-known professor, and they want to hear those wonderful lectures. And then they want to go home and they want to read quietly, silently, read books, okay? But I'll tell you what, do you know what percent of students that represents in today's colleges? I don't have a number, but it's the minority. It's the minority. And that's an issue, because the kind of people in this room right now, many of us might be in that category, but most of the students that we're teaching today That's not who they are. That's not what they prefer. And in fact, some of the recent research that's coming out says that the students, from a variety of backgrounds where they haven't had very positive experiences in formal education, do much better in non-lecture classes, in classes that are much more interactive, where they can use the material they're learning right away and interact with other students. And they don't do well sitting in a lecture hall. It just doesn't work for them to do that. So I think, in terms of all students, we need to kind of almost flip what we do, because maybe if the majority of teaching was done for a certain group, that's not who's here anymore. We have to think about the majority of our students. And yes, it's true. Some students will say, I liked it the old way. There's definitely that group. But we want to reach all students, and the ones that are struggling, they're the ones that need flipped learning the most. I think they stand the most to benefit from it. And the ones that prefer the traditional college, experience, can learn in spite of if you flip your class, okay? And also the other thing is you don't need to flip every single class in every single discipline. So that's why, is it all for all disciplines? Most people who flip, I don't know what your disciplines are. Engineering, they love it. Statistics, they love it. Mathematics, chemistry. These are the classes that generally get flipped. I'm a big one for languages, because you use the language in the classroom more, and you can get samples of language outside the classroom, so I think it's wonderful for language education. I've seen it used in nursing a lot, and physical therapy. It depends on the discipline. I do think that there are some disciplines where it may or may not be as useful. So there's no one approach that's going to suit every single course on every single campus. That's not the point. But the point is, take a look at it and see if it works for you or for some of your courses. I know that when I first started, the only course I flipped was linguistics, because linguistics is like chemistry. It's linguistics. So I thought that would be the first one to flip. And then when I did that, I thought, well, maybe I should flip some of the other classes. So I did actually start flipping some of my other classes, and I'll get to that later and tell you a little bit about what I've been actually doing in some of my classes. All right, so what does the flipped learning cycle look like? I'm going to show you two very quick cycles. One is you have the traditional, this is the traditional cycle, instructional videos. Then I have my students do some individual research based on the video. So they each go off on their own and they'll research something that I introduce in the video. So if, for example, if I'm working on morphology and I analyze a word, I ask them to pick a word and analyze it and come back to class and show us their analysis. Then in-class collaboration, which can include anything, and then the observation feedback assessment piece that I told you about, and then we go around again to decide what the next video would have. So this is like a cycle. Now there's another one that a lot of people use, which is starts with exploration. This one, if you teach science, for example, this comes from Musalam, and what he advocates is that you don't start by sending them home to watch a video. You start by doing something exploratory in the classroom first, that's problem-based, that has gaps for them, and you identify with them what the gaps are, and then it's kind of motivating for them then to go home and see, oh, I need to learn about this, I need to learn about this, so that I can solve the problem that was introduced in the class. So that's the exploration approach, and that's another way to get at flipped learning. So I just wanted to show you those two. All right, so I just had a few quotes. I might just zip through these, but these were responses. I did a flipped learning course, a professional development course, 6-week online professional development course on flipped learning, and I asked this question of the participants. So these are their answers. When I asked them, how do you see your job, how do you see it differently, going from conventional to flipped. So these are some of their answers. You can just read them yourselves and get an idea. I tried to put them side by side, the ones that dealt with the same topic, and you can just read through those. Just some samples of their ideas. Okay, so suppose Rochester wants to get behind this. What are you going to need? Now, this isn't my work at all. I have the citation on the slide. But this is an idea of what it's going to take if you really want to do it institutionally. I know some institutions are supporting it. You do need a lot of support. This isn't something, you know, teachers can't just suddenly, just like putting a class online, you know, it takes something to do that. So if you really want to get into flipping courses, you need to think about the climate at your institution and how it's going to be received, both from the macro and the micro perspective in your various schools and departments at the university, and you need support. And I don't know what kind of support systems you have set up. And you need people who are interested in innovation. I know that I got a mini, just from my example, I did get a mini grant and a grad assistant, and I had an instructional designer who worked very closely with me, gave me many more hours. I'm sure other professors were like, "How come you're spending so much time with, you know, Helene Marshall?" You know, but you know, I needed a lot. I needed a lot from my institution in order to make this happen. I mean, this didn't just happen. And vision, I started following John and Aaron around the country, wherever, you know, I got very, very involved in this vision of what I could do, with flipped learning across the board. And then I had to develop my own expertise, and I have to admit that my strength is not the technological part. My videos are pretty clunky still, and I need more support in that area. So, you know, everyone, I'm just saying, laying it out there that it is complicated. It's not just a very simple thing. I don't know, those of you that have flipped here, I don't know what your experience has been or what you've been able to accomplish with it. But it's a little more complicated than it sounds like just, oh, I'm going to flip. So I ended up flipping in 3 contexts. My lecture class, the linguistics, that was the main one. And then I've been flipping my professional preparation courses, my methods courses. I actually flip methods courses, which are, you know, skills-based application, how to teach. I flip those. And I even flip my student teaching seminar. So one of the things to realize is there's always something that you can farm out that takes time, that wastes time in your class. You can always find a piece of whatever you teach that you don't really need to do in class, all right? So I'm asking you to kind of think about your courses and what about them you might flip. I mean, just to take, for example, I was just talking with someone earlier about what I do in my student teaching seminar. I don't know if any of you are in teacher ed. I mean, we are in the Warner School of Education here, so maybe there are some people. But we have to do something called EdTPA. It's a national thing we have to do. And there's a handbook. And the handbook is dense, and it was ruining my seminar. We couldn't have a real seminar because I had to take them through all of these regulations and how to do this, and I thought, oh, this is deadly boring. What am I going to do? I want to talk about teaching. So I made installment videos based on the handbook, highlighting for them, when you do this section, remember this, and here's a tip on this. And, you know, I made all kinds of suggestions to them in these little videos that went along with the handbook. And then our seminar was free to be a true seminar. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. So in my lecture, in my linguistics class, I'm going to go very quickly through what I did. I had what I called my linguistics lecture hall. The student research that I mentioned that they did individually, then in-class collaboration, and they did final projects. Okay, now purposes for video. There are 3 different types of video that I used. One is course procedures. You can make videos, instead of having to lay out, you know how you explain, you go through the syllabus and how you're going to use Blackboard or what all of that can be done on video. So I would say, you know, if you're having trouble with accessing Blackboard, and I made a whole video showing them everything about Blackboard, and it's on the video. Okay? So any course procedures, and also then you don't have to worry about if someone's absent or they miss it or they have a question. It's up there. It's on the video. So course procedures, academic content, obviously, but then applications, implementations. For example, when I teach the methods course, I have them watch videos of teachers and critique them, and I give them a set of questions. Watch this teacher, and look at the teacher interacting, giving feedback to students. What are the types of feedback that you notice in this video? So that's another kind, that's not me delivering material, that's having them watch some application or implementation. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. People tend to think of the traditional, I deliver my lecture outside of class, so that's not what it is. Now the other thing to point out is that when you do make content video, you can either create or curate your videos. So creating, you make your own, and curating, you find great ones. There's a lot out there. You don't need to do it all on your own. You know, a lot of people don't flip because they say, I don't have time for that. Well, I did make 16 linguistics lectures. Whew. And it took a lot of work. And it was the way I wanted to teach linguistics. But Steven Pinker, you gotta love Steven Pinker. And he's great. So I had them watch him. And he's got some great videos. So you curate also. You find videos out there that will portray some of what you want to share with your students. And then I had them I have this thing called a wonder wall. I know we won't have time for that, but I have a wonder wall in my room where they come in and they put up anything they found, sites they found, information they found, something they want to share with the class. I never put anything on it. It's their wall. And I asked them after they watched Pinker, I said, your favorite Pinker quote, put it up on the wall. And then they go up and they read the wall before class, after class. It's a wonder wall. And I have friends who do it digitally. They have a digital wonder wall instead of a physical wonder wall. If you teach online, wonder wall, look it up. It's SMU, so it's Michigan, University of Michigan, Lansing, East Lansing.
Michigan State.
Yeah, the Spartans. MSU. Norm Lowndes is the originator of the wonder wall. Okay, look it up. Okay, so very quickly, this is what I do when I prepare my videos. Content with slides, guide questions. I use the webcam. There's a big debate, should you use a webcam or not? You know, it's not Hollywood, but I want them to see me. Nonverbal communication is more than 60% of communication. You're looking at me right now. If I turn around, okay, now you don't get any visual, all right? You're getting nothing. So I don't know. I mean, I think it makes a difference, especially if you have international students. Think about that. They get a lot from expression, and it's you know? All right. Watch, pause, rewind, jot down points to clarify in class. This slide was made by a student of mine. She knows what all these things are. This is not my area. Here are some recommendations. She thinks these are great. Educreation, Smart Recorder, use your own video camera, Camtasia, all right? I'm just showing them to you. I don't know how to use them myself, okay? I have one thing I use, I stick with it because I'm comfortable with it. I use Adobe Connect. But you can create your videos many, many, many different ways. There are a lot of ways to do videos. That's not what I'm here to, share with you, okay? You can find that out. There are a lot of ways to make videos. This is the way my videos look. So I am up there, that's me, and underneath me I have the questions. The guide questions are what they're expected to know when they come to class. If they don't know the answers to those questions, they shouldn't show up to class, all right? And what I've done is, if I know and I rely on them and they know the answers to those questions, they're fine. But every now and then I get a student who's clueless and I say, okay, I need to see the answers to those questions. I've actually had to do that once or twice. and I would, give them an extra support that particular student needed to actually write down the answer to the questions as a study guide. So, and we got him through the course that way. All right, I also have quotes at the bottom. These are student quotes that I put at the bottom of the slides. Okay, so those are the guide questions. This is the main area where I have the presentation and then that. So, so this is me giving a lecture. I don't know if I want to actually do this, but we'll see. We'll see for a minute. Opening, let's say, okay. All right, this is just a few minutes. I won't do this for long, just for a minute. You can watch it. It's supposed to go. Let's see if it goes. Hello, here we go.
Welcome to lecture number 13, Morphophonemics. And this lecture will wrap up this section of the course, the building blocks of language, part 2.
And then I show a cartoon. That's my technique. I always show a cartoon at the beginning, just to lighten the mood a little bit. So that's my morphophonemics cartoon.
Let's go into the data. We'll start with a familiar example. You remember our work with the prefix meaning not. You remember that. The prefix meaning not. The prefix meaning not in front of these words.
So I'm asking them to interact with the material.
From morphology, that there are various ways to express this prefix in terms of the spelling, right? And today we're going to go beyond the spelling of the morpheme and take a look at the IPA for the morphemes. So fill in your answers to this based on what we've done already in the course.
This is from 3 years ago. I'm much better today. But I just want to show you. I tell them they can pause, and then I give them the answer.
Say each word out loud, and what do you notice? All right, here come the answers. This is the spelling, not the...
And then I ask them if they can figure out the rule. And then I say, see if you can figure out the rule.
These are actually not just the prefix, but they're making words. So we have illogical.
All right. So they're supposed to figure out the rule. See, that's the idea. It's interesting to me because it's linguistics. Anyway, okay. So, so then I say, okay, I'm going to give the answer. So pause if you're, pause. And then I always do a challenge. At the end, I always do a challenge, and I say, here's a problem for you to figure out on your own. So I give them that at the end. All right? So that's all I wanted to show you. Just a quick sample. And now I want to get out of it. How do I, it's not letting me get out of it. Oh, probably I have to close it to get out of it. Okay, so then I have to go back. Now I have to go back. All right, sorry about that. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, if I want to curate, this is Pinker. The other one up here is a site. This is, I'm not going to take you to it because I don't want to spend the time. But this is a site on the upper left. They can go to a site to hear sounds and analyze them phonologically, and then they can hear Steven Pinker. And the one on the right is something they share in Blackboard, where they share their own sites that they found. So these are just some of the other things that we do. Okay. This is the one I'm telling you about if you do have large lecture halls. So what you can do is, this is kind of what Measure would do, is you give a concept test with clickers, and then the students would respond. And if they get, if less than 30% get it correct, you revisit the concept with them. If more than 70% get it, you move on. And if it's 3 to 70, that's when the peer the peer interaction goes on, and they start talking with each other to see if they can sort it out between them. And I've seen this in action at flipped learning conferences, and it's pretty effective. And then they poll again to see if they've been able, by peer instruction, to clarify for each other. So that's just a thought. Okay, and we had our textbooks. This is the student research. I'm just going to click through this. In-class collaboration. They're accountable. This is all peer interaction and collaboration in my class, okay? And there I am, but I just want to click through. Then they gave their presentations. And finally, some of my students gave videos they gave instructional videos as their final project. So they each picked a language. It's linguistics, so they each picked a language and they made a video to teach the rest of the class about their language. She used a puppet to teach Farsi. It was kind of fun. And there's my Wonderwall, just to show it to you. Okay, and this is my class. That was my classroom. That's a 360-degree video, which I'm not going to show you, of my classroom because we don't have a lot of time, but it'll be on what I send to Eric. This was one of my international students. I thought it was a very important quote to show you. I want to get into the assessment piece now of the results that I got. And you can see what she's saying. She's from it says from Thailand. So that's Nata, to give you a quote from her. And when I did an assessment, this is for my implementation, I had the students do interviews, questionnaires, course evaluation, blog. I did a lot of data collection. And I also did mastery collection, in-class exercises, presentations, midterm, and final for my class. And I got some really, really good results from it. This was the instructional designer commenting on the class. She came several times, and she also interviewed the students on what the flipped learning implementation resulted in, and how I was able to implement it. So these are just some quotes from her to show an independent perspective that she gave me on my work with the students and in the classroom. And then when I got the student perspective, again, anonymous questionnaires, they prefer flipped classroom to traditional class structure. Strongly agree or agree. Very positive results. And this is just mine, but if you look through, if you read through what the findings are, I mean, it's amazing. The findings are generally very positive for flipped learning. What I wanted to show you was the results in terms of appreciation. I have kind of these, I don't know if you can see the little arrows pointing to the relevant ones. Appreciation for the field. This is linguistics. Understanding the material, solving problems in the field, general intellectual development. And we have something at LIU called the Challenge and Engagement Index, and it came out very high on that. And that was 2012, the first year I did it. And this was 2013, the second year I did it. So it came out very high from that perspective, okay? And these were quotes from the students. And what I wanted you to notice here is that this question, the particular question asked here was, what did you like best? You always want to ask, what stands out? Every single one of these didn't have to do with the lectures and the videos. It had to do with what happened in the class. All of them, what they liked best was what happened in class. And that's why I say it's about leveraging the technology. It's what happens in the classroom that's important, that's made possible by farming out the other material, okay? And this is someone else's. I wanted to show you someone, because now you heard all linguistics, here's computer science. And these are results, whoop, I didn't mean to do that. These are the results from Sarawaji's computer science class, start of the semester to the end of the semester. This is what she found, and their enthusiasm there. The first two do have to do with the lectures, setting their pace and coming to class prepared, and then the second two have to do with doing with the classroom. So there's student feedback. Benefits, helping with course organization. Students miss class, they can find out what happened. Reaching all students. This is a big one. The big one for me is reaching all students. I really think that the students today, this is the way to grab them, this is the way to reach them. They're getting their content anyway. So my question to you now as we end is this. Did I do all of these things? This is our acronym, FLIP. Flexible environments, learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator. It's on that handout you were given. So think about everything I just told you during this presentation. Think about, did I create flexible environments for students? Were the environments flexible? Did I create a learning culture as opposed to teacher-driven? Intentional content. I was making decisions about the content that I wanted them to have. And then professional educator has to do with the role of facilitating instruction, not just delivering instruction, but using your skills in feedback and observation and assessment on an ongoing basis. So it's a slight different role for educators. So that's why we use this. And you have the checklist on the back of the handout is this checklist, which lists all of these and the definitions of them and what you can ask yourself to see if you are flipping. So what are my suggestions for anyone who wants to try it? Start small. Don't be overly ambitious. Work with an instructional designer. Be prepared to have more interaction with students. Like I said, it's going to be different. It's going to feel different. And be brave and encouraged because you're trying to improve instruction. You're trying to reach students that you haven't been able to reach as well before. Okay? So if you wanted to learn more about flipped learning, and you'll have these links, Katie Gimbar has a ton of little videos that answer all your questions. Like, what do you do if they don't watch the video? Or things like that. You know, she has great question answer videos. Our network, the Flipped Learning Network, we have a great site. We have a wonderful community with 20,000 people who are talking all the time. You can join your discipline. No matter what you teach, I guarantee you there's a group of people that are talking about flipping in your discipline online. So those conversations are happening. And Dan Spencer has a resource page that has everything and anything to do with flipped learning, having like, you know, different ways to, different software to use and all of that. Articles to read, resources, research, everything. He updates that regularly. So those are my 3 recommendations of where to go. And that's my message. Flip it. So if we have time for questions. So what are your thoughts, feelings, questions? Yeah.
When you're invited to give presentations like this, have you ever considered doing them in a flipped way and sending out materials beforehand?
Yeah, if it's more than an hour, it's only the short time frame. And when I do professional development, generally speaking, which I do a lot, I always do a Google Doc. What I usually do for PD is a Google Doc where I ask a question in advance. I send out an article for people to read in advance, and then they come in. Yeah, I usually flip. Yeah, this was a little different. Yeah.
And what if you're an ESL teacher, and when your students are in very low language proficiency, will still carry on the flipped classroom in classroom setting? Because they might have some difficulty even understanding instructions. So in that case, will you do that? And if you do, what would you carry them on the whole classroom?
What
would you design a course when you're carrying the flipped classroom
Yeah.
in the setting?
Well, there are a lot of ESL teachers who are using flipped learning now. It's very big in flipped learning. One of them is in the videos. You can use some glossary for difficult words. You can use captions in the videos, and also some videos include native language examples. And then also in the classroom, you can pair students who can work together at different levels so they can help each other. So there's a lot of that with the peer interaction in an EFL classroom. But is there anyone, is there an IEP, is there an intensive English program here? Or for international students? Do you have one at Rochester? Yeah, because there might be, you might want to talk with the instructors there, because I bet you that they're using the flipped approach, or at least some of them are. I'm not sure who's here. Do you know who's here at the, is there an IEP here?
No.
No. Oh, because you don't have enough. Yeah. Okay, yeah, right. Did you have a comment?
No, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is flipped learning the same as blended or hybrid?
Yeah, so, okay. So, blended learning is a cover term for combining face-to-face instruction with elements that are online. And so flipped learning does that. So flipped learning is a type of blended learning. That's why I call it the perfect blend.
Got it.
Yeah, I didn't mention this because of time, but I flip my online classes. So I actually flip my online classes. We meet every week in Adobe Connect, which was what I was showing you. We meet in Adobe Connect and have a regular face-to-face online class, but then I also have them watch my videos outside of the classroom so that when they come to class, we do interactive work and go into breakouts. Yeah.
I'm curious
Yeah.
as to the ratio between the length of the online portion beforehand and the length of the actual class period. Like, how long are your lectures and how long are your
I
classes?
know, it's do I have to tell you? Okay, here's the thing. No, because I'm very unpopular that way. Mine are too long. Everyone tells me my lectures are too long. They're great, but they're too long. I have to, yeah. So I'm just gonna say some of my lectures are 50 minutes. Well, I figure I lecture, don't you ever have a 50-minute class? I mean, I used to lecture for 50 minutes. So I started making my lectures for 50 minutes, and they're too long. So I kind of broke them up. So now they're more like 20 to 30 minutes. But they recommend, the K-12 people say, don't make it more than 5 to 7 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes? How can you be a college professor and teach something in 5 to 7 minutes? So I have an issue with that. As far as the class, it's a regular class. My classes meet 2.5 hours. I'm 2.5 hours a week, 1 day a week. I teach grad school. So I don't have the 3. I used to teach, when I taught undergrad, I had 50, 50, 50. So it doesn't affect class time at all, theoretically. You teach the same, whatever your syllabus says to teach, whatever your class meets, it meets the same time.
Do you cover the same amount of material before versus after? Is it the same amount of subjects and topics and all that? Because I know some folks mention that, like, to do that transition, the coverage changes in order to accommodate that transition. So you might have better mastery, but less coverage.
Yeah, that used to happen to me, but that went away because I got kind of better at it. I mean, in the beginning,
The material's the same.
yeah,
regardless.
in the beginning, I got through less because I was, there's a learning curve when you do this. And so one of the first things that happens is you cover less material, but eventually you get into a rhythm where you're actually able to cover the same amount of material, which I am now. So it's anything else. It's not going to, I'm just preparing you for the fact that when you first try it, you might find that it's very difficult. And I would suggest doing it with somebody. Have someone with you when you do it. And if anyone wants to contact me, you can contact me about it. But that's definitely an issue of coverage. But like I said, with linguistics, what I found though was I got depth over breadth.
Right, and that's what you're really targeting,
Yeah,
is
they were
affecting a change.
I was amazed what they were able to do. I mean, to me, that's worth the whole thing right there. If they can think like a linguist, my goal was, can they think like a linguist when they're done? And I used to teach it, and they had all this memorization down, but they couldn't think like a linguist. If I threw a problem at them, they were like, well, I don't know how to figure that out. And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I want you to be able to figure that out. And that's what I was able to get. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think the video lens is a big issue because I had this experience with MOOCs, and I also read some research articles about like when the teaching videos are over 5 to 7 minutes, then students will get bored and will get distracted because they're online. And from my own learning experience from like MOOCs, you know, if the video is just 5 minutes, you probably need to take 30 minutes to finish the video. And because you always want to pause to, yes, and sometimes you want to, after like 2 or 3 minutes learning, you will think, okay, I will click on YouTube to see, maybe listen a song or something, and then you get distracted and you can't go back to class.
That's the attention.
Yes, that is a really, really difficult problem.
That's true.
For the flipped learning class.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think part of it is if the video is just somebody if it's a talking head, that's not what you want. I mean, you want to be engaging them in thinking and problem solving, asking them questions. And one of the things I didn't show you, and I don't use it because I don't have that expertise, but there are people who use learner analytics, if you're familiar with that. And what they can do is actually analyze how much time the students are spending on each given point, and whether they're rewinding and pausing, and then you can plan your next work with them based on what was problematic and how long they spent and that sort of thing. So you can analyze how your lectures are going, how your videos are going. Other questions? Yeah.
I have 2 questions. The first one is like, when you put EFL or ESL learning class, how do you take students like multicultural backgrounds into account particularly? And the second question is like, what do you usually do when you like follow like the model, and when you finish like the classroom teaching, and is there any follow up? Like, is there any follow up like after classroom teaching, like after the assessment and feedback in the classroom? Is there any like other activities is ongoing?
Yeah, well, what I try and do is I try and have them do projects in addition. I'm answering your second question first. That especially with, well, you see, the idea is that we're really talking about pedagogy here. And so everyone teaches differently. But I think it's very important that they have some kind of project that they work on together as a group, that it isn't just solving problems, but coming up with something on their own. So that's why, in my case, they worked on a specific language, and that was something that was ongoing. So part of class every week would be project time. And that was something that I was never able to, there was never anything, project time? Who has time for project time? Come and see me in office hours. But we were able to incorporate projects beyond the normal curriculum. As far as culture goes, you know, one of the biggest things I talk about is culturally responsive teaching. And the fact that there's a big difference between individualistic and collectivistic cultures in the way they view learning. And some people like to work independently, and some people like to interact with other people and work together. So I always offer options. I offer choices. And I say, you know, if you want to work on this by yourself, work on it by yourself. If they want to sit there and work alone, that's fine. If they want to work as a pair, they want to work in a group, you know. But it's sort of a synergy that happens. Once you establish this kind of fertile space in your classroom, students will gravitate to other students. They'll do that on their own. They'll figure it out on their own where they feel comfortable in terms of, you know, culturally. So part of that is just allowing it to happen and not orchestrating it so much. Is that making sense for you? Yeah, that's kind of a general answer, but we can talk more because we're going to talk later anyway. Yeah. Anybody else? Did I check? Can I just ask? I mean, because I'm more curious than anything else. Did anybody shift their thinking about flipped learning, either one way or another, as a result of this? Or is everybody pretty much where they were and they just sat, heard something new? But I mean, did anyone kind of have a different perspective as a result of this? I would be interested in that. You kind of, wherever you were, you are.
Yeah, I teach a 4-hour class, in the evenings. I'm going to have to, one of my classes, I'm going to need to be an hour and a half late. And I went, oh, wait, I know, I can do something for the hour and a half, let them in, show up to class an hour and a half late. So, and I hadn't even thought of that. So, I fixed my problem.
Because it counts as contact hours.
Right.
Yes, I count the lecture time as contact hours when I do it. Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Your work was affirming. I found myself nodding a lot.
Oh.
Yep, check.
Are you flipping?
I've been doing it for quite a long time.
What do you flip?
Online classes, used to do it face-to-face, but mostly with the online that we do here.
Actually, I was asking your discipline.
Oh, online teaching and learning. Teaching teachers how to teach online.
Oh!
Recursion.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't know who was in the room in terms of the disciplines. Because every discipline does this very, very differently. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your attention.